Hello everyone and welcome to our Prague channel. If you haven't done so already, please click on the bell below the screen to subscribe to this channel. Yesterday, while I was reading up on Bloomberg, I discovered an interesting column written by somebody called Tyler Cowan, and it was entitled "The Coronavirus Killed the Progressive Left." Interesting title, and I tend to agree with him. Not only has the coronavirus radically affected our lives and our way of working, this evening the so-called lockdown is descending upon South Africa, and no one will be allowed to leave their residences or their abodes. And it's going to be something very new to us to be cloistered in our homes. But also on a political level, the virus is having a huge impact. And one of the impacts that Mr. Tyler Cowan discerns in the USA is that there has been a marked swing to the right, particularly within the Democratic Party. We've seen the decline of support for Bernie Sanders, or Sanders as they call him in the USA, and Mrs. Elizabeth Warren. And the party has rallied around the supposedly more moderate candidate, Mr. Joe Biden. And concomitantly with these party political developments, especially in the US, we've seen that the whole idea of open borders has become suspect. All over Europe, borders or quasi-borders are going up. People are checking you as you cross from France to Germany or from France to Italy, and within even the so-called Schengen states that manage their borders collectively, there are now forms of border checks. The second element, also mentioned by Tyler Cowan, is that egalitarianism is on the wane. And he explains that, especially in the United States, by saying that the elites in California and in the Northeast, in New England, that are, as he calls them, the backbone of the progressive movement in America, they are now worried about their own future, about their children and their families and their homes. So they no longer push, by means of their money and their media clout, political clout, business clout, and so on, they're no longer pushing the egalitarian agenda as strongly as they've done before. Then there already is a massive dose of fiscal policy, both in Europe and in the US, in places like even New Zealand, Australia, South Africa. For the first time in history, I think we here in South Africa are going to have quantitative easing applied by our South African Reserve Bank in order to prop up the markets and try and rescue the economy from a complete collapse as a result of the virus. Then there are issues like public transport. The left has always been against motor cars and in favor of public transport. And with the risks now of contagion in public transport and wherever masses of people congregate, such as in stations and underground trains, subways, the motor car is making a bit of a comeback. Being enclosed in your safe space, your individual space, safe space in your motor vehicle. That is now a safer way of getting around than taking public transport. The fifth element would be the government intervention in healthcare. We've seen how, well, in Europe, where they've got national healthcare anyway, they seem to have coped, especially in places like Germany, a lot better with counteracting the virus than in some of the places where they only have private healthcare. And in South Africa too, with the new emergency regulations around the lockdown and the virus, combating the coronavirus, the government has just about nationalized the private hospitals because it has free access to those hospitals in order to transfer patients there. And from what I understand, they will be under the obligation to treat those patients, regardless of whether those patients are paying or whether they've got medical aid or insurance or not. And then remember the whole issue of climate change. I haven't seen any reports about Greta Thunberg since the virus crisis started. So that is being placed on the back burner by the progressive left. They are now more concerned with their own safety and perhaps that of the national populations of the various countries where they reside. But when we think of the progressive left, or the politically correct mob, as some people might want to call them, the roots of this movement go back to the 19th century and, of course, to the communist movement founded by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. And, I have a curious little book on my shelf, the Communist Party Manifesto of 1848, in this kind of very nice little edition from the 1930s. And it almost looks like a poetry book, except it's not poetry, it's the main piece of the pièce de résistance of communist propaganda from more than a century ago. And the whole idea of internationalism or globalism is defined in the Communist Manifesto in the following words, translated from the German. This is the English edition. They say, Marx and Engels, the working men have no country. We cannot take from them what they have not got. Since the proletariat must first of all acquire political supremacy, must rise to be the leading class of the nation, must constitute itself the nation. It is so far itself national, although not in the bourgeois sense of the word. And here's a very important element. National differences and antagonisms between peoples are daily more and more vanishing, owing to the development of the bourgeoisie, to freedom of commerce, to the world market, to uniformity in the mode of production and in the conditions of life corresponding thereto. The supremacy of the proletariat will cause them to vanish still faster, unquote. Now, if you look at the core of the left-wing cult is this notion that nations will have to disappear, and there's just going to be this global mass of people moving about, crossing borders, doing what they like, and nation states waning in the process. But as a result of this virus, we are now seeing the opposite process taking place. Internationalism or globalism is no longer as fashionable as it was among 19th century communists and among 21st century globalists and industrialists and globalist tech companies. No, people are looking towards borders and the maintenance of those borders. And they are becoming concerned about the production of goods and of food as well. Because, I don't know in your country, but in this country, in South Africa, there's a shortage of masks, surgical masks, all kinds of masks, as well as a hand sanitizer. And even the shops have run out of food here and there. But I think we are self-sufficient thanks to our Afrikaner farmers regarding food production. But in a place like the United Kingdom, they don't produce enough food to feed their own people. So if the food gets held up at the border, the people are going to find that they might be short of food or even starving. So all of these issues are coming to the fore. And politics, as a result of people traveling less and focusing more on their immediate surroundings and their own safety, will become more local, and the nation state, in contradistinction to what the globalists have foreseen for us, is already in resurgence. And to my mind, that is a good thing. That's a silver lining on the dark cloud that COVID-19 and the coronavirus is actually casting over us at present. Thank you for watching, and at the moment the Prague logo will appear next on the right hand side of this screen. Please click on it and subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so. And until next time, goodbye.